What is up, and welcome back to another episode of So There's That. I'm your hostess, doing the mostest, Keep She, and we are here again, y'all, with Women's History Month, Women in Film. Today's film, we're going to be talking about Daughters of the Dust. This film was done in 1992. It's an hour and 53 minutes, and it's like a historical drama slash like romance of the people of Gullah and the Gullah Geechee culture that migrated from West African countries over to the like eastern shoreland between Florida, some parts of Florida, South Carolina, and Atlanta. So this is going to be a little bit different than some of the reviews that I do because I think the film itself is just like rooted in something that I can't really describe or really explain without you watching it. So I'm just going to give you my thoughts on what I think you should do as far as watching the movie. And then we're going to go over some facts and stuff that I actually wrote down, not only about Gullah Geechee like then, but Gullah Geechee now. And yeah, so the reason I chose this film is because as far as like Black American culture goes, and as far as like slave trade and just immigration into what later became the United States of America, is a lot of talk about like, oh, Black Americans don't know their culture, they don't know their history, and they don't know all these other things. Now, while some of us may not be able to pinpoint like multi-generational people or have a lot of stories, there are a lot of things that Black Americans do that are culturally significant and connects us to places like Nigeria, like Ghana, Sierra Leone, because those practices, while we may have forgotten why we do them, there are things that we still do. And this film, which was done by Julie Dash, so it was written, directed, and created by Julie Dash, and it's about her family and them coming over and migrating to the mainlands, which is what is referred to in the movie. And so it's like, you may not understand why you do design braids, but our people have been doing design braids. You don't understand why you may be attracted to certain patterns and quilts and stuff when you're going to the store, or why you're attracted to certain types of arts and patterns, because it's historically ingrained in us, even if over time the history of where that came from was forgotten. So I just think that this is a really good movie for Black Americans, at least, to watch and really understand and just feel less sad about the fact that some of us can't trace our lineage too far back. But I also think it's a great movie for people who are truly African American, so people who immigrated to America. I think it's a good movie for them to watch as well, because one of the things that we talk about in the film, or one of the themes that's discussed in the film, is there are some people in the family who, as they are going to the mainland, they want to actively let go of cultural practices. They want to let go of the multiple gods and things that they serve. They want to let go of the spiritual and magical practices and stuff of their land, so that they can completely adopt and adapt in the mainland to one God, to not believing in magic, to not believing in the spirits and the soil and the earth and the wind and stuff like that. And so I think one of the big things that Black Americans receive is just like, oh, well, y'all are so far away from this, that, and the third. Whereas this film shows, and I'm sure it happened as well, that people came over here willing to shed their traditional practices in order to blend in and survive. And Africans aren't the only people who do it. You know, I've had Puerto Rican friends, Mexican friends with some of the most white names. And when, I asked them, I'm like, why did your mom or why did your parents name you that? And they were like, well, they wanted me to have a better advantage of not being stereotyped if they saw the name Steve, if they saw the name Brad, and stuff like that. And so it's like, it really shows you the battle between holding on to your cultural identity and assimilation in a way. So Highly recommend to watch it. It's not done in some type of way that would make you like spread the cultural divide between Black people across the diaspora in multiple different countries and continents. But it's really done in a way, even to be filmed in 1992, it's really done in a way that connects everybody together. Like you can still assimilate but still pass down those stories and pass down those traditions to your children, like the braiding of the hair, twisting of the hair. What does this outfit mean? What does this lace pattern mean? What does the length of a dress mean? What does it mean to have this waistband or this cummerbund on this outfit versus the colors threaded in this outfit? And so in this film you really get to see hair patterns. You get to go with like the different like dialects. You get to have different languages, and you really sit as a multi-generational family talking about what life is going to be like as they're traversing from this West African region over to the mainland in the United States of America. And you have one part of the people saying, let's continue and not forget our ways. And then you have the other part that's like, no, we need to do what we survive. And the whole goal is to meet in the middle and say, why do we have to choose one or the other? Why can't we find a way to do both while going there and adapting, but still keeping our people alive, keeping the sacrifices alive, keeping our ancestors alive? One of the characters, there's like it's like a wooden plank, and it's written on there the character's name and then the date, and she was 2 years free from slavery. And so it's like, while you understand one part of it's like, well, let's just forget all of this stuff ever happened and all these other things, it's like, well, we can't forget, because that was a sacrifice that they made, and there were some things that they endured for us to even be able to have this opportunity to continue our culture in somewhere that could be a little bit safer. um and I just thought that that was really beautiful. So that's why it's not like a traditional, like, oh, this happened and then this happened and then this happened, because it's just something that you have to experience. Like, one of my favorite parts of the film was the power in a name, and in the way that nicknames are born as well. So I'm always joking, especially on my dad's side of the family. We have so many people in my family. Like, if you tell me their real names right now, I'm gonna be like, I have no clue who you're talking about, because I only know them by their nicknames. And some of them acquired their nicknames due to like just quirks and stuff that they were growing up with. But like my yaya, one of her nicknames, like, it's not a middle name, it's not nothing. But the reason her nickname became is because her mother was in a relationship where like the men were dominating everything, and they're the ones who named the kid, and her mom didn't want her to have that name, so she acquiesced and gave her her legal name. But her whole life she called her the name that she wanted to call her. And so you have spaces and stuff like that, and there's moments in the film where they're talking about the name that you're given and the nicknames that you're given, and how those things are born out of ancestry, out of connection. And so as you think about that, especially as a Black American, if you're watching this, you're thinking about, we can make fun of stuff like Black people always be giving they kids like duplicate names, like May May, Juju, BB, da da da. And but it's for a reason, right? We're not just continuing to do this because we made this up in our mind. Even when we don't know, our parents did it, their parents did it, their parents did it, so on and so forth. So it's like, by the end of the movie, I still took pride in being a Black American, and knowing that while some of my ancestors had to endure atrocities in this country, um I know that things that I do, while there are a lot of things that are original to me because I'm of my own mind, body, and soul, I love that some of my habits, probably most of my habits, are rooted in just cultural inheritance. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think this is a film that a lot of people need to see in order to just realize, like, don't let people tease you into being ashamed or embarrassed that you can't go over to Nigeria, or you can't go over to Jamaica, or you can't go over to Sierra Leone and find your great granddaddy's uh grave site or the house that they own. Don't let anybody take your history from you, because everything that you do is still rooted in that history. So, what is the history that we are talking about? So, first and foremost, you can find this on Tubi for free, okay? If you can find it on Tubi, some things I've noticed, if you can find it on Tubi, you can find it on YouTube. So if you don't have the Tubi app, look on YouTube. So the logline is, it's a languid, impressionistic story of 3 generations of Gullah women living on the South Carolina Sea Islands in 1902. So that is the setting in 1902. The genre, I already told y'all, is drama, history, romance. Writer and the director was Julie Dash. Cinematographer is Arthur Jafa. The production designer is Kerry Marshall. Costume designer, Arline Burks Gant. The composer is John Barnes. And the main cast members are Cora Day, who plays Nana, Alva Rogers, who plays Eula, and Barbara O, who plays Yellow Mary. So Nana represents the old soul and the old lands from where they're coming from. Yellow Mary represents the need to assimilate to the new world, because she's just trying to escape and figure out her own identity. And Eula represents the blend of the two. So Daughters of the Dust was inspired by director Julie Dash's Gullah heritage, her father's childhood amongst the Gullah people, and the West African storytelling traditions, aiming to depict the culture of the Sea Islands and the migration of African Americans from the South. So as you watch this movie, at least when I watched it, they're all like gathered at the sea, and they're eating and they're communing and they're joking and they're doing each other's hair, and somebody's rocking a baby. It reminds me of just Black people at the cookout. Like, you're just there, you're communing with multiple generations, you're there with your cousins, and you're telling stories, you're talking crap about each other, you're loving on each other. And so just out the gate, there's just this sense of community. And so it makes sense that she would want to tell this story. And what I also love is that while there's some push and pull, there's no real antagonist or protagonist. So this is a movie that just is about Black people, African culture that just exists, right? It's not rooted in trauma or pain or like PTSD or anything like that. It's just people at the cusp of the turn of a century trying to figure it out and trying to find ways so that their family can continue to live on and to be able to maintain a cultural identity. So the origins and the ancestry of the Gullah people, they are descendants of enslaved Africans, many of who came from the rice growing regions of West Africa, including areas surrounding Sierra Leone, Senegal, Guinea, Angola, and Cote d'Ivoire. So the Gullah Geechee distinction, this goes into like 2 different areas. It's like a geographical situation. So Gullah is associated with the Sea Island communities of South Carolina, and Geechee is used for similar communities in Georgia and Florida. So you'll find more Gullah Geechee culture in Atlanta or Georgia and Florida, and then you'll get more Gullah from the Sea Islands in the South Carolinas. So there is a Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor. I will put the link to that website in the description box as well as the show notes, so you can just read that information. And who knows, especially if your family is from at least one of those places, you may actually be a part of like Gullah or Gullah Geechee culture and heritage if you're not actively practicing it today, because they still do practice these things. They have different historical areas like museums, schools, communities. So those communities are still in existence today. And I just love how, like the indigenous Americans, and just indigenous people across multiple continents before, disease and colonization, that they're still keeping these stories alive, even if they've adapted to the times, right? Because to me, I think a lot of people hold on to the term tradition and it becomes like this unchanging and this immovable thing. But in my eyes, like tradition is fluid. Tradition is mobile. And as long as the family is kind of doing the things and we're continuing to ingrain it without losing old stories and losing old recipes, then tradition is going to be whatever it is of that decade with those people. And so I love that it's still a thing to this day. So as far as their cultural practices, Gullah culture is characterized by its blending of African and European traditions, including storytelling, music, dance, cuisine, and craftsmanship. So again, talking about the blend and kind of adapting to the decade or the times that you're in without completely abandoning where you came from in the first place. So with that, as I was watching it, what was it, 2023, I finally decided to do like the 23andMe ancestry situation or whatever, to see like, okay, what is my genetic cultural identity? Like I know some stuff from people in my life and people in my family, but I'm like, okay, I think at the core of a lot of things with Black Americans is we're not going to abandon being Black or American, because what we've done in the face of being stripped of community and being stripped of cultural identity, we are the blueprint to the world. Our music, our food, how we speak, our slang, our language, our gestures, like those things are studied and used in everybody's culture. It doesn't matter if they take it and they make it into their own thing. A lot of this stuff comes from us and our resiliency and our ability to take the crap and the literal shit that was given to us and make it something beautiful and not crumble underneath the weight of oppression, but then turning oppression on its head and continuing to move forward. I'm going to always be proud of that. But I also believe that in the midst of all of that, I think we're still looking for like, why do we all sit and braid our hair? Why do we all come together in the barbershop or the beauty shop? Why do we organize our hair products like this? Why do we put these things in our hair products? Why do we grease our scalps? Why do these hairstyles are the ones that last and make our hair grow? Why do we burn our hair? Why do we have all of these superstitions about spirituality and hexes, hoodoo, voodoo, and things of that nature, right? You can say, oh, my grandma believed in this, but your grandma got it from somebody else too. And so, it's not, again, you shouldn't feel ashamed for also wanting to know what's in your DNA. So I got mine done, and my ancestry composition, I'll share that here. So 78.3% sub-Saharan African, with 68.3 being concentrated in West Africa. Of that, the main areas of my West African genetic makeup are Nigeria, specifically Abia, Nigeria, Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. The rest of my genetic makeup is European, and specifically British, Irish, French, and German. So as far as my Nigerian and Ghanaian / Liberian, Sierra Leonean genetic makeup goes, it's 3 generations removed. So some great grandparents along the way. And then as far as British and Irish, French and German, they are 5 generations removed. So like I know my great grandparents. So my paternal great grandmother and grandfather, I know my great grandmother was Nigerian, and um, great grandfather was French Creole, like indigenous American stuff in there. And I have some indigenous American ancestry in there, but it's not like my full makeup. Like it's literally 78% sub-Saharan African, and then like everything else is mostly European. Um, and then my great grandmother on my maternal side has more of like the Sierra Leone and more of like Indonesian as well. Um, but as far as like pictures and stuff go, there's a couple of oil paintings. There's a couple of photographs of at least on my maternal great grandmother's side. The only picture I ever saw of her was her funeral. I didn't see anything else of that. So a lot of my like in-home traditions and cultures and everything just came from my grandmother's and being the matriarch. Um, I know my grandfather on my maternal side has a lot of European genetic makeup in him, but you know, in this country, if you don't look white, you're treated black, even if like culturally that's not like who you are. Even like I remember being young and my yaya, I remember like as I'm discovering skin colors, I remember just always answer her like, "You're white," and she'd be like, "I'm not white," and I'm like, "Well, you're not black, like you don't look like me," and she's like, "I'm not white," and I'm like, "Well, what are you?" You know what I mean? Discovering like, oh, my cousins, like, "Oh, you're light skin," and that's because people started using that language and stuff around me. Like I don't know, like in my life and you know where I grew up, I had Trinidadian friends, mixed friends, Ethiopian friends. Like I don't know, we just all were black. Like you really couldn't be like, "Oh, your hair says this or your hair says that." But it wasn't until I was 12 and I moved where I actually experienced like a lot of people, to include black people, being like, "Well, you're not all the way," or "You look a little different," or "There's something that's off about you." And so I was like a young adolescent when I was truly made aware of like something is in the mix, or like you're mixed with something, because for the most part of me growing up, that wasn't a thing. Like there was kinky hair, there was silky hair, there was straight hair, there was wavy hair, there was curly hair, there was super light skin, there was super red, there were some people that almost looked white, there was people that was super dark, there was people that was caramel, and everything in between. It was just life, and it was just culture, right? The world told me that something was off and tried to convince me that something was wrong. But, you know, unlucky for the world, my birthday is on Juneteenth, and I went to black schools literally my whole life until seventh grade. So a lot of that stuff wasn't like phasing me. But then I think about people who didn't have that experience and how a lot of those things messed with their identity and trying to figure themselves out in the world as far as being black and reconciling with their ancestor potentially being, you know, descendants of slaves. So this movie, again, just circling it all the way back, like these are the things that I was thinking about as I was watching this film. And it made me feel grateful for the people that I grew up in the house with. It made me feel grateful for always asking questions and always pushing the boundaries and asking my grandparents about their childhood and why they do this and why do you have these belt buckles and why do you have these quilts and why do you throw salt over your shoulder or why do you cook food this way. But it also makes me feel um humble and more readily available to want to impart this same type of knowledge not only to people after me but even people that I consider family, you know, the friends that you make along the way, and just encouraging people to just first and foremost feel pride in who you are and who your family is and how they shaped you. And then, not feel ashamed for seeking out the information that they can't readily fill in the blanks. My grandmother, my living grandmother, is about to be 83 years old. There are lots of things that she remembers, but she's 83 years old. Your memory is going to, come and go over time. Your brain is getting older. But I also have a grandmother who had to drop out of school at 9, and then later on had to teach herself how to read, how to teach herself how to write, and had to do everything that she could to get her kids through college and to have a life that she didn't have. And so being an inquisitive kid, always up underneath both of my grandmas, um, asking those questions, like, from everything, what were your hardships, but also seeing them in their dresses and their outfits and the way that they put things together. And it's like, well, why did you do this? And, oh, you look fly and you look good. And, my love of hats, my love of suits. I love a good suit outfit. I love a good blazer. The lace patterns. I like and am drawn to patterns in blankets and patterns in art. I'm drawn to materials. Rice is one of my favorite dishes and materials to just be connected with. I learned how to do hair when I was 6. I was like full on like doing cornrows and like designs when I was 6. And so it's like, don't be afraid to be knowledge seekers for your own identity and to continue to fill in those blanks. And then another thing that was in the back of my mind as I was watching this was like, with love, Meghan Markle's show on Netflix, right? She's not doing anything new. This is a mixed Black American, and she's doing things that her ancestors did, that her mother taught her and bestowed upon her, that her grandmother bestowed upon her, so on and so forth. And what you see, and what made me think about that, again, you're looking at community. And the biggest way to get people to turn on one another is to break up their community. And we already know the history of slavery. I'm not going to harp on it, but the big thing was to break up our community and reduce the power in our homes. And so, you have with love, Meghan, well, it says Meghan Markle, sorry, Meghan Sussex. It's just some pots, some pans, some vegetables in the ground, and just getting together and talking and sharing. And in this film, where the setting is meant to be in 1902, it's the same thing. Getting together. They was cooking some crabs, they were cooking some stew, they got some beef, and they're just getting together, talking about their cousins and the grandkids, but talking also about their migration to the mainlands and what that's going to mean for their families. It's just about community. And so, to kind of wrap it all up, and just again, even with Women's History Month, like, women, we are the purveyors of community. And it is so hard being a woman. It is so hard being a woman. And this is one of the few times I'm going to say I'm talking about all women. Because I'm Black. I don't know the experience of any other woman that's not Black. But it is so hard being a woman. And it's why community within womanhood and friendship within women, regardless of your race and ethnic and cultural background, is so important. People are coming out of our wombs. We are the first ones that are setting that example of what that community and what that love and what that tradition and what happiness and peace looks like. So if we can create that with one another in our families and with our friends, and then we're doing that to our kids and, each other's cousins and nephews and nieces and all this other stuff, whether they're boys or girls, this is how you continue to push this and drive that narrative forward for community. And community is lost in a lot of different ways. People don't know how to be friends. People don't know how to be parents. People don't know how to be children. People don't know how to be good co-workers because they lack community. Everything is about the individual and never for the good of the group, which is why I chose this movie, because I think in the times that we're in today, a lot of people who aren't Black are really experiencing the lack of community. And you're experiencing the lack of community because you don't create. You don't embody it at all. You want to be in spaces, but you don't know how to create that space on your own. You don't know how to exude something that get people to come to you and get drawn to you within your own authenticity, within your own joy, and within your own peace. So if you don't know how to create it, then try consuming media, try having conversations and connecting so that you learn how to build that and learn how to cultivate that. And then you can link up with people across multiple communities, across multiple diasporas to continue to drive life forward. So there's that. Didn't mean to get like super philosophical or whatever. But this film just means a lot to me. I had never seen it before until now. And I don't know, I just think it's the perfect time to watch a film like this, especially because there is no violence, there is no death, there isn't any of that. It's conversation about moving your family, your life into the new phase and what that looks like by continuing to maintain your cultural and communal identities. And I just feel like a lot of times in life, we're not doing anything different. I remember asking my friend the other day, I was like, what if like parallels, like every time there's a turn of the century, what if those millennials are constantly pushing for the same thing their predecessor millennials did, or the people from the 70s, what did they push that was similar to the people in the 30s, so on and so forth. Like I feel like we're living the same lives and we're striving to do the same things, and we are succeeding in some areas and we're failing in others. So I just don't think that there are a lot of new things that we're doing or a lot of new ideas. There's new material, right? We have, metals, we have technology, we have all these other things. But I think the core of us and the way that our brains work and the things that we're faced with at the turn of a millennia, at a half century, so on and so forth, I think that our souls are still fighting to achieve the same result. So we're only given one life. We are only given our opportunity. And so what can we do until the next group of people who mirrors our births end up still trying to do the same thing? So with that, I'm going to end this episode here. As always, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave comments in the comments box below. Make sure you share the audio only links via Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Again, you can always find me on Instagram at So There's That Podcast, as well as TikTok and Twitter. I almost forgot the name. I almost said Twitch. Why? And Twitter at Kivanchi. And on TikTok, we get a little traction over there because I'm doing short form content specifically and exclusively for shows that I do not cover on the podcast. It's a fun time. If you don't like listening to me for like this super long time, you can literally find me on TikTok, 3 minutes or less. So if you could spare 3 minutes of your time, catch a girl over that. And with that, I am out. I don't know what accent I was getting ready to say. I just be slipping into character. I don't know. I don't know, y'all. I'm gonna go.